Good morning. Welcome in. Sports by the Book, Saturday, July 27th, the final Saturday of July. We're 40 days from the first game of the NFL season, Ravens and the Chiefs. I'm Jeff Parles. Alongside today, you've seen him a few times already on the show, from Unabated, our good friend Tom Viola, sitting in for Alex Witt today.
Jeff, it is great to be here and an honor to be filling in for Alex, as always. Shout out to her. She was the guest on our podcast this week as well, the Unabated podcast.
Where can everyone find that?
They can find that wherever they get their podcasts, specifically Spotify and Apple Podcasts, but we are everywhere, and just search the Unabated podcast.
Very nice, very nice, very nice. Check that out for sure with Alex Witt with a nice Saturday off after I got last Saturday off. So
A fair trade.
Very much. I'll very happily take that Saturday off for sure. Last week was a lot of fun. All right, let's get into things today. So, Tom, I want to just start with the Olympics more so than anything. Than just we'll get into the baseball slate. There's actually brilliant baseball scheduling. There's no games until 3:07 Eastern time today. So great work by baseball to take advantage of a nice July afternoon on a Saturday.
I mean, this is just, you want to avoid all of the Olympic traffic in the morning here. Very clearly, that's what Manfred is thinking.
I'm sure that was the thought process,
yeah.
Tom. So the Olympic Games are officially underway after the boat parade, for lack of a better description, yesterday. I'll
tell you, I lost my wager. I had one boat sinking. I had boats sunk over half.
You should have just had boats stalled. That would have been the better bet, probably.
Yeah.
Even though the memes were good.
Mm-hmm.
The memes were good. LeBron taking the Americans across the Delaware.
While he's in France, it's actually Le LeBron.
Oh, Le LeBron.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it just be Le Bron?
But no, LeBron is his name, so it's Le LeBron. We're off to a roaring start here, ladies and gentlemen. Roaring start.
The viewership down to nothing right away.
Yep.
But Tom, so betting the Olympics, there are a lot of events, and we talk about this with, actually, Kenny White was on earlier in the week, and I asked him, Kenny, what's the hardest, what are you doing most right now for prep-wise? And Kenny said, I'm looking for markets that are not usually bet, so I'm doing a lot of prep right now on women's college basketball. So when the season comes around and the books have everything to keep track of, I know I might have an advantage over them. And Tom, this is sort of the time where it's a lot of events that bookmakers are not used to booking.
Yeah.
And a lot of, especially the new age books, are coming out and putting numbers up for essentially every match that's out there right now. There's actually one in the with three new age books out there. This is Roger Sherman who tweeted this out earlier, that basically you can find basically a $3.50 difference for futures in women's beach volleyball on the better, quote unquote, better of the American teams for women's beach volleyball.
Yeah.
This is the perfect. If you think you have an edge on it, like if you know water polo better or men's field hockey or whatever it may be, this is the perfect few weeks to take advantage of that.
And that's not all. It's also the fact that you have these bookmakers who straight up don't have the time to go and research all of these niche sports that, let's face it, I'm sure if Vinny's coming in to join us today, he can tell us you're not receiving that much action.
Of course.
And so because of that, it really does open up a very massive opportunity for you. I think that we actually talked about this last time I was on the show, but this is a time, and these are obscure sports to the point where a half hour of your time can make a huge difference and give you an actual edge in terms of these betting markets with just a few Google searches. Because I guarantee you that's more research than a lot of sports books are doing when they're putting up these lines here. And let's face it, most originators probably aren't pulling out their water polo model just to take advantage of some of these lines on the Olympics here.
Don't disrespect the water polo models that are out there, Tom. Come on now.
I'm just saying, there's not a lot of information going into these lines. If you spend literally a half hour of your time, you're going to be able to find some edges in these smaller markets. The trick is you just want to focus in. Don't say, okay, well, I want to bet every sport this Olympics. Pick like two or three. Pick one that's going on this week, one that's going on in the middle, and one that's going on in the end. Something like that, where you can actually drill down, maybe dedicate an hour to just looking at these teams, looking at the field, and, you know, using some common sense logic too. Like if you're going to bet on women's basketball, let's face it, chances are the U.S. is the team that you want to be betting on. But there's a lot of other sports where you can go in and find those less obvious marks.
So I'm happy you brought that up because the future market that I actually gave out on Frank's show on Thursday was a market that actually Circa then put the market up, and I got a better price, and I betted myself on Thursday where you bring up women, the men's and women's basketball, the traditional 5-on-5 is going to be the most popularly bet thing, at least here, because that's what most people know.
Yeah.
They know all the players that are playing for the men's Olympic team, obviously. They know now that WNBA is purely in the mainstream, Tom.
Yeah.
Everyone knows everyone knows all the players on the women's Olympic basketball team, and they also don't know most of the players that are not on the U.S. team in the Olympics on the women's side. So you're going to be paying a premium basically you'll be paying a slight premium in the men's games, maybe not as much after their little struggle during their tune-up games. But the women's side, you're going to be paying a premium. Yeah. And one of the bets that I actually made was actually in the 3-on-3 market, Tom. I actually took the U.S. women's team in the 3-on-3 market because there was one book still offering plus 115. Circa opened it yesterday, and you were laying a price on the 3-on-3 women's team for the USA. So there are markets that, at least even in the futures market still, of the events that are still up, and they'll repopulate as the events through the day end. That's the one good thing about being out here with the Olympics being in France. Everything will be over by about 6 o'clock,
and we
give
also
or take out here.
It's a much friendlier time zone. But when it comes to basketball, that's probably going to be one of them. Like you said, that's the more popular one.
That and soccer are going to be the two most bet sports.
Yeah, those are the two sports that are going to be the most bet. But you and 10 other people are going to be betting on the Lithuanian team handball team.
Ooh.
And Lithuania's got a good team handball. I'm just saying, but that's my point here, is you want to look for the more obscure sports. The other thing that you really want to do, stick to sports that have a score.
Yes,
it has to be scoreable, timeable, whatever you do. Not bet on things that need to be judged.
Yep.
Because there is way too much. You think UFC judges are bad? Olympic judges are a million times worse because there is an actual reality. It's not like the conspiracy theory of the guy who's tagging you in all these Twitter posts about fixed games now. There is actual shady business going on. I mean, there's a whole story breaking right now with fencing and the fencing judges and how corrupt that entire organization is. Stay away from anything that has to be judged because you're not playing on a fair playing field.
So I'm happy you brought that up. In Nevada, if it's judged, except for boxing, you can't bet. You can't bet on it.
And there is an absolute reason for that.
And this is for people in the newer jurisdictions. If you happen to be betting on something that is judged, you're playing at your own peril. I'm 100% with you on that.
Yeah.
Where, look, if you're looking for action, like plenty of scored or timed sports in these Olympics.
Yeah.
Again, the water polos of the world, the field hockeys of the world, the even like the weightlifting, you don't even need is not judged. That's just pure reps. There are a lot of events that are much better than anything that takes again, even though you probably are confident in select things in gymnastics, that's still judged.
I mean, remember the gymnastics scandal? I want to say 2008 with Nastia Lukin, where
I think that wasn't it. Was that 8 or 12?
It was one of the two. Yeah. It was a while ago, but it was the one where there were the questions about the age of the Chinese athletes. But then one of the women that was going up against Nastia, had what was according to the people who actually knew gymnastics, they were like, "This is an outrage that the judges scored this one higher than hers." Like stuff like that happens a lot. Again, you think UFC is bad? They got nothing on Olympic judges.
I will say real quick, Tom, I just want to go through some of the sports that people that are readily available here in Nevada. Right now, France is leading Brazil by 3 at halftime in men's hoops. Wembanyama apparently put a Brazilian on a poster at the end of the half. Right now, France actually is the same number they closed in in-game markets, maybe a little steep. They're back up to 10, even though they were 10-point favorites pre-flop. So a little bit of a weird jumble in the marketplace by some of those automated numbers there. Greece takes on Canada later today. I have the Canadians as the second best team in the field. Only the Americans better for men's basketball.
The question is, will the Americans show up?
They'll be fine. They'll be the fact that they didn't lose as 40 whatever point favorites last week. Yeah, I think they'll be okay. But I will bring this. Greece is basically Giannis and nothing else.
Yeah.
So
you're telling me Thanasis isn't helping out over there?
Even though it's steep on the surface, that's still probably a good bet on Canada. This morning, Australia covered against Spain, where I'm sure there are a lot of people that were just flying in late and like, well, wait a second, why is Spain an underdog? They're usually very powerful in the Olympics. This is the worst Spain team in a very long time in the Olympics. And they got stuck in the group of death as it is anyway, where they have to play Canada and Greece after losing to the Boomers earlier today. Also, Germany, good bookmaking here. 18.5-point favorites win by 20 against Japan. So good bookmaking on that. Tomorrow, I actually bet this when I saw the number before. Obviously, everything moved after South Sudan almost took the Americans out. Puerto Rico opened a 3.5-point favorite against South Sudan, which was wrong to begin with.
Yeah.
I ended up getting 3 before the market really, really crumbled. South Sudan's now a 2-point favorite or a 1.5-point favorite in most places. I still think that's actually okay on South Sudan. I really do. I think that's they should be about a 4-point favorite in this game, not a 2-point favorite. So nothing wrong with that. And then the Americans tomorrow, Tom, 12.5-point favorites against Serbia. They already whacked this Serbian team earlier in prelims, or not prelims, in the tune-up stage. That was the one blowout they actually had. I would steer clear. I do think that total's too low with the way the U.S. has been playing. They're just these games are going to be played in the 190s, the way the U.S. wants to play these games. So at 181, which you did bring up, if Circa has the best number to market, is a little bit concerning on the position you want. 181 at Circa, 181.5 behind us. I still think that's okay to go over that. I wouldn't go much more than that if you're going to go over in that game, Tom.
Yeah.
And then the women's side of things, just bringing this up real quick, because that tournament begins tomorrow. The world has gotten a lot better over the last 8 years in women's basketball, because this team on paper for the U.S., you would expect them to just run everyone out of the building. They only had 2 tune-up games. One of them was the WNBA All-Star game, which was the classic, hey, all the players that didn't make the Olympic team are ticked off, and that's exactly what happened with Agunbalale going off in that game. Yeah. And then the tune-up against Germany where they won comfortably. They're 20 against Japan, who they actually beat in the gold medal match 3 years ago in Tokyo. I would only take 20 with Japan if you're going to bet that game. Again, I still think it's going to take a few games for this team to really start rolling over everyone completely. So that would be that's for Monday, by the way, taking 20. And then I also like China plus 7.5 against Spain early morning tomorrow on the women's side, Tom.
I mean, China's got a very, very big advantage, quite literally, in having one of the tallest players in the field.
The 7'1" player.
That is wild.
Yeah, she is gigantic. The video of her against smaller players in the Chinese league is actually pretty comical in all honesty. It's basically like if you put me against a group of 7-year-olds with the way of the height difference more so than anything. But Spain is athletic. They probably are the second or third best team in this field. So that's where we're at there. All right, Tom. Do you have anything on the soccer at all, though? Because this is obviously a little bit different. Younger teams. Yeah. With the U23s here. Again, we already saw one result that would shock people with Morocco beating Argentina, even with all that idiocy that went along with it the other day. Yeah. Argentina did bounce back this morning. They did take out Iraq in their matchup earlier this morning, 3-1. Spain also handled the Dominican Republic 3-1 earlier this morning as well. But is this just a little bit like, hey, a little too far out of the comfort zone because the rosters are just too much different than what the normal national teams are? Or is this, okay, maybe there's more of an advantage here?
Yeah, you really do want to be watching out for what these rosters are because it's more about the youth level. And the other thing is in a U23 competition, there's a very different dynamic to it versus well, A, an actual competition, but B, a U20 or a U17 competition where it's the youth teams. Because U23, at that point, Jeff, you're kind of just at the spot where, well, if you were really one of the best players, you'd already be on the regular team. So the U23 is very much the B squads that we're talking about here. So you're looking at teams that are really heavy in depth, or you're looking at teams that maybe didn't bring their super young guys that they just wanted to get cup competition time for. I know Argentina really wanted to take this competition seriously because you do get a few exceptions, and they were going to bring Messi, but he got that ankle injury at the end of the Copa, and that's going to keep him out of these Olympics. It's the same thing that I say with all soccer. I mean, we've got the Leagues Cup going on in America now with MLS and Liga MX, and it's all about looking at the rosters. Look at who is actually taking these competitions seriously. Look, if you want to start betting on this, look at which teams brought their real players. And again, it's a 30-minute Google search. Look at some of these rosters, take a look there, and you're going to be setting yourself up pretty well for success there. And same thing in the Leagues Cup right now, because that is very much a competition that a lot of teams don't care about. And so you'll be able to find some spots where, oh, wait a second, this team is playing their starters. They actually want to go and win this competition, and this team is trying to get a month off right now.
It all checks out.
Yep.
And, so Team USA got pretty well handled by France in the opener. I mean, this is kind of spiraling towards France versus Spain again.
Yeah, it really could be. I mean, France and Spain are both really good teams. There's a reason that they have been so good at the top level for so long. I will say the U.S. was holding its own for a good amount of that game. They lost 3-0.
Then it all
the wheels fell off. Yeah. But there was a good first half there where the U.S. was looking pretty dang good.
All right, let's take a quick break, Tom. That was the Olympic portion of the show here today.
Mm-hmm.
When we get back, we'll look at today's baseball card. We'll also get Tom's thoughts on the AFC North. We're going to hold our standings for next week, but Tom may have some thoughts on what we said throughout the week when we get back. Sports by the Book, South Point Studio.
From the South Point Studio, the perfect blend of sports.
But I think the Niners are going to wear them down. Detroit Pistons lost their 36 games.
Comedy.
See over-under on that relationship lasting. I'm going to put mayo in the coffee.
Yeah.
I am beautiful.
And a whole lot of Pittsburgh.
In Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh. Yeah. Pittsburgh.
Join Ryan McCormick.
That's at least 2 picks outside of our own in the first round next year. Oreo.
And host Frank Nicotero.
I look at the clock, I go,
Watch Punchlines live at noon every weekday.
Once you've satisfied your hunger, get ready for more of the hottest casino games in Vegas. Our 24-hour, 30-table non-smoking poker room proudly hosts all the most popular poker games with a variety of betting limits. Visit the poker room for a schedule of daily tournaments. Whether you're going to hold 'em or fold 'em, the best place for poker is at South Point Casino. You'll notice that our craps tables are usually the loudest in the casino. If you've never played, join one of our free craps lessons to find out what makes this game so exciting. Check with the craps dealer for schedules and give it a roll. Bingo is also an exciting way to spend your time. We offer 7 sessions of bingo every day. Bingo! And each session includes a cash ball jackpot, 12 bingo games, a progressive double action game, and a $10,000 bonus coverall. Electronic units are available. If you haven't played bingo with us, give it a try today. Guests can also get in on the action at our one-of-a-kind race and sports books. 2 separate rooms designed to maximize your experience and comfort. Our sports book, with over 400 seats, puts you right in the middle of the action, 24 hours a day.
It's by the Book, South Point Studio. Jeff Parles, Tom Viola in for Alex White this morning. Happy to be with you as we always are. 40 days from the National Football League season and 1 month. We'll be talking about week 0, Tom Viola.
Woo.
Week 0, which we always love going across the pond to begin our season, which we will be doing again on August 24th when Florida State takes on Georgia Tech in Dublin. Throw out the record books when the Yellow Jackets and Knowles play in Ireland, Tom.
I mean, what kind of rivalry would you rather see go over there? That's the perfect game for them. All those Georgia Tech fans. Little known fact, Ireland, huge Georgia Tech country. Notre Dame, nothing.
No, I was going to say I do love the fact that we started this with sending Notre Dame over, and you know what? Hey, you know what? That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Sending Notre Dame over there. All right, nothing wrong with that. Of course, last year to begin the year, they torch Navy last year in that 42-3 game when Navy's coach decided to take the sad field goal and blow up my in-game under, Tom. But hey, did you know that Georgia Tech will join only Navy and Notre Dame and Boston College's teams to play multiple times over there in Dublin this year? So there you go.
They're cultivating the fan base for the Yellow Jackets.
Also, I will tell you, I am a gigantic fan of them sending Farmageddon over there in 2025. The fact that Iowa State and Kansas State is being played in Ireland next year is one of the funniest things you possibly could have drawn up.
That is so absurd.
Farmageddon. You know how confused all the people in Ireland will be when people bring up Farmageddon. Like, what are you talking about?
I really think they need to bring a bowl game over there, and it needs to be as ridiculous, if not just straight up bringing the Pop-Tarts Bowl there.
Well, I wouldn't bring the Pop-Tarts Bowl over there. I mean,
the European mind cannot comprehend the Pop-Tarts Bowl.
No, I don't know if any mind can comprehend the Pop-Tarts Bowl. In all honesty, Tom, but that would be got to be Guinness has to have some say in a bowl game if there was a bowl game.
Oh yeah. Did you see? Did you see that they actually had at one of the conference media days the votive candles for the Pop-Tarts?
Yeah, the ACC did it.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it was good stuff. It was real good stuff. All right, let's go to work here on baseball here, Tom. Let's start in New York. I just want to start here. The Mets, who were 10 games behind Atlanta on June 3rd, are now a half game ahead of them for the top wild card in the NL. It was basically a perfect night until Kodai Senga hurt his calf last night. He goes back on the IL this morning with a strained calf that he suffered in the 6th inning of his start. Two really quad A starters today in this game. Tyler McGill makes his return from AAA, and Schwellenbach goes for the Bravos. Minus 120 here on the Mets, plus 110 on the takeback for the Atlanta Braves with a total of 8 in this one, Tom. And I would just continue to ride the hot hand at this point. It would only be a look to the Mets for me.
Is there any sort of bias coming in on that play whatsoever here, Jack?
No.
I agree.
I think these pitchers. I think both of these pitchers are bad. If you want to go over 8, you can go with it. I have no problem on that.
Matchbook has over 7.5.
Hold on. Now I gotta do one last check, because with these pitchers, that means we have something very wrong with the wind. And the wind, at least as of last night, didn't look particularly awful. And based off of this report, I mean, it's 80 degrees and 9 mile an hour in. That should not dictate a 7.5, 8 with these pitchers here.
No, it should not. But I'm curious about that as well. But how about the Grimace era Mets, man?
Oh, that is the best record in baseball since it, over 700 win percentage. Be on pace now for 118 wins in 162 games, Tom.
Good Lord. Could you imagine? Meanwhile, the Braves, what is that, the fastest blown lead in baseball history?
No, not quite. No, trust me, the Mets have had some say in that, Tom. But look, I said this yesterday, like, I haven't watched them fully in tune over these last few months. I just, you know how it is. You pop in and out unless if it's your team more so than anything, and you rely on the numbers that are around it more so than anything when you're trying to bet baseball on a daily basis. Watching Atlanta the last 2 games, they're just a shell of themselves because of all these injuries. There's too many injuries to overcome when it's all said and done here. I mean, you're down your best starter.
Yeah.
You're down Ronald Acuna, who's your best player, arguably the best player in the National League. You're down Ozzie Albies now, who is a spark plug more so than anything. And a high-end spark plug. I don't want to insult Albies, who was an all-star caliber player. And look, Matt Olson's not the same this year. Austin Riley's having an average season as opposed to an all-star caliber season. And when you lose all those guys, you need to have that. Oh, and also, I don't have Michael Harris Jr. right now. So you're without three of your six best offensive players. You're without your best starting pitcher, and your best position players having an incredibly down year in Olson. So that's the recipe to blow a 10-game lead in 6.5 weeks.
Yeah, and that's the reality of this team. They were a great regression candidate to start the year, and that is very much coming true here. The injury luck is not with them this season.
So for Atlanta, again, entering today, just real quick in the National League wildcard standings, we've talked about this on a daily basis, it feels like, Tom. Jumbled mess in the NL wildcard right now. And you have the Mets a half game ahead of Atlanta and San Diego. By the way, Mets and Padres combined 11 straight wins between the two of them right now, with the Braves losing 6 in a row. Arizona, who came from behind to beat Pittsburgh last night, they're a game out. The Cardinals, who are finally starting to regress to what their numbers say, are a game and a half behind the Padres and Braves, and the Pirates, really just a bad loss to take, leading that game 3-0, end up blowing it all together. 2.5 games behind the rest of the bunch. So 6 teams right now for 3 spots where we're at right now. The Braves started the week, by the way, Tom, at plus 800 on the they will miss the playoffs. As of this morning, after dipping to plus 380 yesterday, the Atlanta Braves have now shrunk again to only plus 320 on the no. Again, it's a different handicap than it was 5 days ago.
Yeah.
With the way they look, there are worse plus money bets to be made. I still think they find a way in, because I just don't think I trust Arizona enough to hold them, if they catch them, to hold them off. But look, the Mets and San Diego and the Padres both playing some great ball right now, and looked like they both were going to lull out of the break, and they did not.
And the other reality is that it's not like the Braves are going to be sellers at the deadline.
No,
they're going
to buy.
Yeah, they're going to try and make some moves to get back in this and get that shot in the arm. So I don't know if I would really want to take that plus 320 there, because, again, I don't trust the Diamondbacks. And the other thing, quite frankly, you mentioned the Pirates were one of the teams in that mix, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you are a Pirates fan and they do not acquire anyone, they do not make any moves at the deadline, you should be rioting in the streets, because if not now, when? For this Pirates team. You are blessed with one of the greatest pitchers apparently of all time here in Paul Skeens. You only have so long that you're going to be able to get him before A, he's a Yankee, and B, he has Tommy John surgery at the age of 26. Use it now. If you're not acquiring, if you're not trying to make moves to take advantage of what you have, at some point, this sport is just becoming a joke here, where you have owners that are actively not interested in winning.
Well, I think that's been the case for a while. Obviously, Bob Nutting in Pittsburgh has been one of the key cases of that. Other than that 3 years where they were in the wild card game 3 consecutive years, from 2013 through 2015. I'll just say, more than anything, Tom, and for the Pirates, look, it's just a question of, do you think if you are good enough at this point to make a run? I think they are, because of what you just said. Their starting pitching, especially their front line starting pitching, is excellent. This
is what you built. This is what you built for.
It's very young. So you could argue, all right, look, if we don't want to push Skeens to, like, let's say 60 innings, 150 innings, or whatever it would end up being.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I can somewhat get that argument if you, like, let's say you get swept in Arizona this weekend and you're about 4.5 out of a playoff spot as opposed to 2.5. Okay, fine. But with the weakness of a lot of these and the flawed nature of a lot of these teams in front of them, they should be buying. Cincinnati's in a weird spot because they're 4.5 out. That's probably on the cusp of being, should we just trade our veteran pieces and try to get some stuff back and just see if the young guys get hot? Maybe sell some bullpen arms? I don't know. We'll see how it all plays out in that league more than anything, because at this rate, I really do think, and I just want to ask you this, because the Cardinals, I've been saying this for a while here, where St. Louis, I thought, has played over their heads. And I know baseball is not as simple as just the run differential. I understand that. But you have to at least look at that when you're trying to figure out if a team's been lucky or not in what their record is, how they've been in one-score games, which the Cardinals have been very good in one-score games this year. St. Louis, of the teams in the race right now, of the 6 teams, the Pirates have a -7 run differential. That's the 5th worst. Everyone else is at least plus 23 right now. And then the Cardinals are -38. So the Cardinals have a similar run differential to the Washington Nationals, who are well out of this thing at this point, 7 games out of a playoff spot. So just, Tom, especially for people that are new bettors or trying to make their own numbers here, how much would you take run differential into account here? Or is it just, hey, I'm just going to take the usual power ratings from all my players and just go from there, where there are a lot of Cardinal guys who their ERA is much lower than their FIP, and we know that is a sign of being fortunate so far this year.
Yeah, I think that you have to look at the stats and look at the underlying metrics there that don't lie. This is a team that is getting lucky. It's the same thing in soccer. We look at like where luck plays a whole lot more into it because of the variance and the even lower scoring. You're looking at expected goals, and that's what you're using to really tell the story of, is a team creating chances? Are they taking their chances? And in baseball, you got to look at it the same way. You have a team with this ridiculous of a run differential. Those wins are eventually going to start turning into losses here.
Right now, other than Sonny Gray, again, the Cardinals have pitched pretty well this year. Offensively speaking, as we've talked about, they have struggled as well. Just looking at the runs created plus, so WRC plus. Other than Wilson Contreras, Alec Burleson, and Mason Wynn, it's been a lot of pedestrian. Paul Goldschmidt's at 91, which is well below average. Nolan Arenado slightly above average at 104. Again, this Cardinal team, I think, again, you mix in the pitching, which I think has been a little bit over its head this year, and the hitting, which has clearly been a little bit lacking here, Tom. I think they're the weakest team in the bunch, which probably means they'll end up with the top wild card when it's all said and done.
Oh, of course it will. Of course that's what's going to happen. But as far as from a betting standpoint, yeah, I would absolutely be fading them. Trust your eyes. Trust what you're seeing from the stats and saying, okay, this team's not going to get that lucky all season, because that's the other beauty of baseball. You could have a team who outperforms in the NFL for 17 games. You can have a team who outperforms what they should be expected to do, or even their metrics. You've got 162 games in baseball. That's too large of a sample size. Teams are going to be returning to the mean.
Well, you're telling me the Minnesota Vikings from 2 years ago were...
Yeah, exactly.
The Twitter's least favorite team of all time, basically.
Exactly.
The 2022 Minnesota Vikings.
Only rivaled by, what was it, the 2021 Steelers? Which Steelers team was it that went like 13-0 and absolutely nobody thought they were good?
Oh, that was the pandemic season. That was 2020. Where the Steelers were the last undefeated team, and
everybody just knew. You just knew, like, this team is not actually good.
Well, that was one of the best. Bets I've ever made. Was, you remember, because of the ridiculousness of the Baltimore COVID issues around Thanksgiving, and they had that Thanksgiving game moved to the following Wednesday, and the whole schedule got jumbled. Where the Steelers then had to play the following week game against, at the time, the Washington football team.
Yeah.
Tom Viola. Played them on the Monday, and then Alex Smith and Washington went to Hines and beat them.
That was wild.
And we're like a 9-point underdog or something like that. I was like, hey, this is a good spot to take the money line against the Steelers. Steelers, of course, didn't even get out of round 1 that year because that was Baker Mayfield and company putting up 28 points in a quarter against them in the wild card round. Sorry, Sean. Not really sorry, Sean. But by the way, going back to the Cardinals real quick, the market has actually bet them pretty heavily today. They opened minus 130 behind us, now minus 150. So a nice 20-cent move on that game behind us. Total bet to the under at 8.5. I will say, if this keeps climbing on Washington, if we can get into the plus 150 range somehow on the Nats, I would take Jake Irvin and the Nats in this game. That would be a play for me, Tom.
Okay.
So just, again, it's a little too steep almost all the way down. Tom, what do you like in baseball today?
I've got one that unfortunately has already moved a little bit on us here. I had the I had the Padres Orioles under
Okay.
8.5 at even money. It was over at BetMGM. They've moved that up to one. They've moved that down to -105 at this point. But let me see here, because the other thing that I had is Tampa Bay versus
The Reds.
the Reds, and yep, that one's still good. I've got +130 on the first 5. Tampa Bay -0.5.
Okay, so you're taking first 5 run line
Yes.
on the Rays with Littell against Abbott. Abbott had a bad outing his last time out against the Nats. His numbers, his peripherals look okay. If you go deeper into the stat book, it's a little bit of luck so far for Abbott this year. I will say this, Tom, just eyeballing the whole slate today. The game of the day, and I have to bring this up because of what the total has turned into. Minnesota and Detroit with Skubal and Joe Ryan pitching.
Woo.
We have a 6.5, my friend.
Oh my word.
A 6.5. By the way, Twin Small favored -110 behind us. That's actually been a total flipperoonie because the Tigers opened -118, so a complete flipperoonie in that, Tom. Look, we see 6.5 a handful of times a year.
Yeah.
And here you are where Skubal's your betting favorite to win the AL Cy Young. I don't think that's right. I still think it should be Corbin Burns. Joe Ryan has been excellent, especially of late. This is one of those where I'm just the principle is here for me. You just can't justify going under in this game from my perspective. Now,
I mean, how many innings are these guys going to go? You still have to deal with the bullpen.
Here's the thing: Skubal's been pretty much 6 or 7 locked in recently, and if you get 7 shutout out of Skubal, obviously you got an uphill battle here. But for me, when I see that 6.5. It's very, very difficult for me to go under, even consider going under. It'd only be an over on this number right now. That would be the way that I would look to play it here, Tom.
I think that is exactly the way you'd look to play it. Geez, the first 5 market, 3. It's that low.
You know, we've seen 2.5s in the past. I don't remember what game that was. I think it was a Met DeGrom game, which they should have just made the Met team total under 0.5 in the first 5 because you knew they were not going to score for them. But man, that's so low, a 6.5 and a 3 on this one. By the way, I just want to bring up the American League side of things real quick because we did the National League deep dive, Tom, as we are heading into the final few days of July with the trade deadline coming on Tuesday. The AL right now, Cleveland, by the way, with a full game lead on Baltimore for the top record in the AL.
Wow.
Think
about saying that a couple years ago.
Well, think about saying that at the beginning of this year. No one expected this out of Cleveland.
Yeah, that's true.
4.5 clear of Minnesota, 5.5 clear of Kansas City. The Orioles, look, the Yankees are very lucky the Orioles have not put them completely to bed in the American League East. Because as bad as the Yankees have been since June 15th, the second worst record in baseball, only the White Sox worse, the Orioles have not taken full advantage of this. Where if you dated back to the 4th of July, where the Orioles were 55 and 31 going into that game, Baltimore 61 and 42. They just haven't taken advantage. They're 6 and 11 in those 17 games since. And that lead that, quite frankly, should be about 4, 5, maybe even 6 games right now is sitting at 2. So the Orioles are leaving the door open for the Yankees. I just don't know that the Yankees are capable of actually walking through the door after another. Last night, it was the pitching that let them down. They score 7. Judge hits a ball basically into
City Field.
Well, it was in Boston. I was going to say Nantucket, but I
actually 2 weekends ago I was at Fenway for the first time.
Yeah, you told me that off the air. You enjoyed yourself in one of the old classics.
I did actually.
Yeah.
It was a good time.
By the way, knowing Tom. That is an accomplishment to say something good about baseball in general, just from a non-betting perspective.
I told my friends, they were like, "What do you think? How you lay it?" I'm like, "I'm terrified." And they go, "Why?" And I go, "I'm terrified that I'm going to die in some kind of stand related, like baseball related accident. And then at my funeral, all my friends are going to be able to sit there and say, wow, going to a baseball game actually did kill Tom.
God, that's so bad. But right now, I'll say this in the American League. Danny Burke said this 10 days ago. The Minnesota Twins are the team that's flying under the radar here. Still. And you can still get approaching double digits and sometimes double digits to win the American League on them. I know they have a lot of past history that's not particularly good, but we're just talking about 1 year here. It's history until it's not anymore. And I think Minnesota at this point, they're the team under the radar that's kind of sneaking along. Right now, I don't think any of these teams are particularly trustworthy in the American League playoffs. Minnesota has good front-end pitching. Their bullpen's been good enough, and they can hit the baseball. Right now, Tom, they're the third best offense in the American League. It just shows how good the Yankee offense was before this last 6 weeks, that the Yankees are still leading the American League in runs scored.
Look, traditionally speaking, and I this is a groundbreaking little-known correlation, but if you're able to score runs and keep the other team from scoring
very
runs,
good, Tom.
You're usually going to win.
If you're good
games.
at scoring runs and run prevention.
Vinny can come on and talk about it. It's a bookmaker's secret that I just blew up here.
No, I think you're going to send Vinny away with that, Tom. Oh, my goodness. All right, you know what, on that note, I think we got to cut the baseball discussion at least for a second. We'll take a quick break. When we get back, Vinny's going to join us on the desk on a Saturday morning on Sports by the Book.
We have 11 amazing restaurants featuring a wide variety for every price range and appetite. South Point's Garden Buffet has something for everyone at unbeatable prices. Or, if hunger strikes in the middle of the night, join us at Coronado Cafe. The American menu offers breakfast, lunch, or dinner 24 hours a day, plus a Chinese kitchen for authentic Chinese dishes from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. From steak and eggs to wonton soup, it's fast and friendly service 24/7. When you need a quick pick-me-up, you can find it at our state-of-the-art Starbucks just inside the main South Point entrance. Order ahead with the Starbucks app for easy mobile order pickups. Or enjoy your favorites in the relaxing dining area anytime, day or night. If you love Mexican food, Baja Miguel's has all of your south-of-the-border favorites. There are dozens of classics to choose from, like fajitas, ceviche, chimichangas, tacos, and more. And for spirit lovers, Baja's colorful non-smoking tequila bar is right outside. Or maybe you're in the mood for seafood. Big Sur Oyster Bar has fresh seafood prepared right before your eyes. Savor freshly shucked oysters, crab legs jambalaya, shrimp and lobster. Beers on tap and a selection of fine wines are perfect to pair with your seafood favorite. Whether lunch or dinner, you'll love this fun atmosphere, located just off the casino floor. Ready to shake things up? Step back in time and treat yourself to one of the oldest restaurant chains in the country. Steak and Shake, famous for original mouth-watering steak burgers and hand-dipped milkshakes in a variety of flavors. For some old-fashioned fun, try Steak and Shake.
Welcome back in Sports by the Book, South Point Studio. Jeff Parles, Tom Viola in the middle of your screen, and on the far side of your screen, our good friend.
Far side.
The far side, yes. The far side of the screen with the blue background, our guy, Vinny Magliulo.
Gentlemen, good to see you.
Great.
How's everything? That was a tremendous baseball breakdown.
Incredible analysis by Tom.
I'm sorry if I just ruined 50 years of bookmaking.
I don't know if we can book these games anymore. Now that the word's
Now
out.
that the secret's out.
I mean, Jeff is just teeing it up for me. The Twins are good at hitting, and they're not giving up runs.
And you took them downtown.
No, look, I set them up and you knocked them down there, Tom.
Yeah, you threw a meatball over the plate,
Yeah,
which the Twins aren't doing.
Not at the moment. Vinny, real quick, actually, I just want to ask you on that real quick, because 6.5, there's a 6.5 in that Twins-Tigers game, which we just don't see. We just don't see that particularly often, just a handful of times a year, basically.
Yeah, well, obviously, 6.5 over, maybe 7 under, depending on where you're looking. But They did bet it under 7. So it's all about pitching and also the way teams are hitting or not hitting, right? But you're looking at, I think your first spot would be to look at maybe the first 5 innings too, though, right? To see how that breaks down, 3.5, maybe 3.5 over, or 4 under, depending on where you're going to look. But probably 3.5 is the consensus. But the other part is it's all about pitching, and that's what baseball always has, and is going to continue to be predicated on, right? Even though pitchers don't go beyond that, the rotation at best a couple of times. So, right. But there it is. That's a low one for sure, no doubt about it. Especially, in the American League. I mean, obviously you got the DH in both parks now, but particularly, in Detroit, right? I mean, it's not like that's a ballpark that's pitcher friendly when you look at it, especially in recent years with the Tigers. So, but yeah, there it is.
Going to the Olympics real quick.
Yep.
Tom and I talked about it before. Obviously, people are going to bet Olympic hoops. They're going to bet their Olympic soccer because they're the most familiar with those sports.
Yep.
And Vinny, just from your perspective behind the counter here, of course, you have the basketball games, you have the soccer games. Is there anything else that you're going to be looking at booking throughout the next 2.5 weeks there in Paris?
Well, we did put the men's golf up as well, and of course the medal count, to win the gold medal in both the men's and women's basketball, men's and women's soccer, total most gold medals, I should say. But I'm not so sure, guys, how much more. I think it'll mainly depend on how the games play out from an interest standpoint too, right? What kind of storylines develop and things. Anything with a vote, there's not going to be action on, right? So where there are judges involved, that's not going to happen. But I don't expect it to expand greatly, to be honest. In fact, I was just, before I came in to the studio, I was talking to Chris Andrews, director here at Sal Point, and right now it's kind of a wait-and-see approach. It's just very small action. I mean, Serbia got some attention on the men's side, down to 12.5, which I don't know. That's maybe a play against the USA with some of the injuries. No Durant, no Embiid in practice this week. Durant hadn't played in the exhibitions. Nursing a sore leg. Embiid, I think, with a little bit of an illness, but I think he'll go for sure. Whether or not we see Kevin Durant, I'm not sure, but
two guys who just never
have injuries. It's amazing. I'm shocked that it happened. But the fact that they're in the Olympics, I think what we can get a sense of is a lot more load management for next season for a lot of these Olympians. But Jeff, to your original question, I'm not so sure there'll be that much more offerings. Listen, there's a great betting menu again, as we talked about. Remember last week, during the summer, with everything else going on. Of course, you've got it highlighted by baseball now. There's golf every week. I think as we get further into the Olympics, the soccer and basketball action will increase. But also what's increasing is football wagering now as we get closer to the season. And by the way, don't forget the jackpot parlay card here is already out for this is where $25,000 is guaranteed for week 1 of the NFL regular season. No point spreads. It usually gets through $35,000 because we've got so much time to book it. So that's all out there too.
Woo. Now, when it comes to the Olympics and these really niche sports, obviously you're hitting a lot of the big ones that you expect to actually get some decent volume on. But as a bookmaker, when it comes to trying to book these more obscure events like this, how much of it is moving on action? How much of it is sticking on your number? Like, do you find yourself changing up how you would move it a lot?
Not really, Tom. I mean, really, your limits aren't nearly as high as let's say your Olympic basketball. It's not going to be with your NBA, particularly NBA playoffs and things like that. I saw an article yesterday and it was based out of Ohio, sports betting. And the person that wrote the article, not to be critical, but he said that he anticipated the Olympic handle to be greater than the Super Bowl.
What?
I found
What?
that. Oh yeah, there was an article yesterday about how strong the Olympic betting would be, and I found that to be
Maybe in other countries,
bit,
not here though.
Yeah, no, not here. Maybe in France.
Yeah.
But I just from a bookmaking side, you stick to your principles, but you always got your limits to adhere to. And you can raise them if you want, but it's not like your bookmaking principles are the same. But one of those principles is how you allocate and what you assign limit wise to them and things like that. So, but the fact of the matter is, everything is televised. We're watching them now. The staff does a great job of monitoring what's happening. So the principles are the same. It's the limits are not nearly what you see during the regular season on the professional leagues.
Speaking of a moving target on the limits because of the time of year, Vinny.
Mm-hmm.
Games of the year, college football.
Yeah.
Been up for about 8 days.
Yeah.
Behind us, of course, we have. If you are still, it's still evergreen enough. If you want to go back and watch the show, from last Friday, Alex, Vinny, Chris, Paul Stone, they were all here going through games of the year. I know Paul Stone all over the Hogs against his Texas Longhorns in that matchup in Fayetteville later in the year. But Vinny, just how has the action been through the first week plus now of those games of the year being up, and especially now with people, summer starting to wrap for some people in the country, maybe people coming out here for their last ditch summer vacation before the school starts for their kids and such in the next few weeks.
By the way, didn't the kids just get out of school?
It feels like it, doesn't it?
Man.
Yeah.
So games of the year, great response initially, particularly by professional bettors, which is great intel for us. It's good business. I think when you brought up a key point, Jeff, with Paul Stone and the fact that he's a Texas alum and follows the program very closely, that he did take a position in the games of the year, particularly with the Arkansas game going against him. But he also brought up a key point, right? And that is that he, like other professionals, don't bet teams. They bet numbers. And it was a matter of where he felt that based on what he made the number on a couple of those games, that he saw an opportunity to take the points. Most of the bets that we did take were on the dogs. There were a couple of games that the favorite did get played. But again, that's where, for us, the great exercise is, first of all, we're doing business, number one. Number two, it gives us an opportunity that, to look at our power ratings and maybe make some adjustments as we head into the season. Don't forget, week one is up, but not quite to, a lot of those games are not games of the year, although there are some very good games. And I think what's one of the byproducts of the revamping of these conferences is that we're going to see terrific games every week, or at least matchups on paper, right? You look at that there's you typically, or in the past, you would be able to look at the college schedule and go, that's a so-so week. There's not that many good games, or maybe only one, but there should be real good games every week. Getting back to the games of the year, though, it was a great exercise for us. And what it also did for us from a business standpoint is it stimulated action in other sports, in the other football, right? We got an increase. We saw an uptick in future betting, right? Regular season wins, yes, no, for teams to make the playoffs in the NFL and things like that. So, the expanded off-season menu has really contributed to handle for those events, as well as week one for both college and pro. So it's been good so far.
Anecdotally speaking, when it comes to the games of the year and the spreads that you guys put out at this point in the preseason, do you often find that the sharps who come in and are betting these numbers, do you find that they end up on the right side of market value, or do you find that is there a way that these numbers typically trend when it comes to get into the regular season?
Yeah, good question, Tom. The first part of that is sometimes we need that side.
Yeah.
I mean, the reality is that, there are times when, when a professional is on a particular side or series of sides, we may need that side or a lot or all of them, or a significant number of them. So it's not a matter of having this angst right with it. If you're going to have that angst, then you know what, you should do something else. It's a good exercise. Mm-hmm. And it shouldn't be adversarial. And I think we demonstrated that, particularly with the discussion with Paul in the studio and other folks that we respect in the studio. In fact, today Jimmy, Chris, and I are going to have lunch with a good friend of ours who's a very respected a handicapper. So look, you have to have those kinds of relationships, but do professionals win every side they bet? Well, no. But any professional will tell you that if they can get somewhere around 57%, then that's good. That's fine. So they're out there shopping. There are times perhaps with these games of the year, depending on what they bet here and what they saw somewhere else or will see somewhere else. Maybe they'll take a position on the other side as well to try to have a middle if it's a substantial enough spread on that. So, again, it's an exercise. We'll obviously track how we did with them, but don't forget too, in many of these cases with a lot of these games, we're also holding on to the money for several months, which is not a bad thing too. The banks will kind of demonstrate that works out pretty good for them.
Very true.
Just want to bring up one other college football team. Of course, Chris opened the prop as well. Yes. So Georgia and Ohio State
against the field.
Mm-hmm. How have the bettors been doing with that recently?
First bet, I believe, came in on the favorite. So went to I think minus 20 or 25, and then money came in on the field. So there's something to be said about the fact that it's an expanded playoff too, right? And what you see is does something happen perhaps in those first round of games where the top four will get a bye? Now does somebody finish the season strong, play their way into the playoff, and is playing great? So current form going to be like at that time, and then maybe in the semifinals, there's a key injury. Georgia just suffered a bit of a setback too. I think their number one receiver prospect had some legal issues too. So that's something that bears watching, right? Hopefully the young man gets things straightened out. But I think it's a matter of the price. And, look, there's no question that those two teams, Georgia and Ohio State, are at the top of the power ratings right now. So that's also had a lot to do with that price. And but so far it's been two-way action, and I'm very pleased with it.
Do you think with the schedule change, because you touched on the expanded playoff, and of course, extra games in the playoff means more variance and more chance for some of these favorites to maybe go down.
Yeah.
Could it also be an issue with the fact that we have the bye weeks? I know that the first round they're going to play on the December 20th range, so that the top teams are entering around that New Year's time. But with this many teams, if you have a team that maybe doesn't make their conference championship game or something like that, that's a long time on the shelf.
Oh, absolutely. Now, does it help a team perhaps if they're banged up? Yes. Does it hurt them? It's the rust versus rest conversation. So, teams, especially football teams, they're about rhythm. And as we know, football, it's a weekly situation, right? So it's that rhythm, I think, if teams are taken out of their rhythm, I think it could work against them, especially in the first quarter of that next game. Yeah. So that's something that you want to pay attention to as well. I mean, it's a little bit advanced handicapping, but if you do find quarters or, again, there'll be first half wagering, maybe that's a situation where if those teams are significant favorites, maybe it's worth a look at taking the points in those first quarters and first halves at that particular point.
I know that's something that Rufus Peabody talks about as far as
yeah.
the the home field advantage and how that is much more effective in the first quarter than it is in the fourth quarter.
Well, no question, and also more of a factor in college football than in pro football anymore. And again, Rufus with a very good opinion and an opinion that we respect.
Vinny, pleasure as always.
Good to be with you guys.
Tom, pleasure as always as well. Thanks for hopping in here today.
Hey, anytime.
Drew Dog, Sean, good work as always. I'm Jeff Parles. We are back on Tuesday, 9 a.m. for us here on Sports by the Book, of course. In the meantime, over the next few days, Ralph Sirocco's here tomorrow morning, 7 in the morning, getting you ready for the full country's worth of horse racing. Saratoga, Del Mar, every whole shebang with Ralph tomorrow morning at 7. And then, of course, Frank Nicotero and Ryan McCormick are back at noon on Monday with Punchlines. I'm Jeff Parles. We'll see you again on this show on Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. It's been Sports by the Book at the South Point Studio.